Good morning. I want to call this meeting of the Governance Committee to order. We will start with a roll call. Councilor Tabor.
Here.
Councilor Lombardi.
Here.
I'm Councilor Cook and I am here, and Assistant Mayor Kelly could not join us this morning. We also have several city officials here, so welcome everyone. The first item is the approval of the minutes from the June 23rd, 2025 Governance Committee meeting, and I'll share those on the screen for those at home. Any comments, concerns?
Move to approve.
I have one slight change, and I didn't catch this, I'm sorry I didn't catch this before. On the second page, the second paragraph, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 7,
just go down.
8. Line 10. No. Line 10. It starts with "isn't broke it." It says "don't fit it." It should be "fix it." It's just it's a typo. That's all. So.
Madam Chair, I'm not on the committee. I just noticed a typo on the last page. Jane's last name is spelled wrong.
Oh,
I don't know who takes the minutes. But...
Definitely should correct that too.
Barbara. Yep, we'll speak to Barbara.
City Attorney Farini, spelled correctly.
Yay.
Can I get a motion? Can we amend the motion to approve with changes?
Yes.
Okay. And the second's good.
Second agrees.
All right. Any other changes? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are approved. We have an update today from Attorney Farini on the draft encumbrance ordinance. And I'm going to share Attorney Farini's notes for everyone at home. We're still in draft form on all of this. This is nothing that would be approved today. So that's why we're just discussing comments that our attorneys have. So we'll start with, this is very preliminary, so.
Okay, so I'll be happy to talk about what we've done is really attempted to do an outline and then just flushed it out with a few comments that I had in order to get some direction before we come back with an actual red line ordinance. As the committee is very well aware, but maybe some of the folks in the audience are not, is that we have 4 different chapters in our ordinance that touch upon encumbrances, and we have 4 different city council policies. So the task is to try to streamline and put them all in one place to benefit everybody, to benefit the public, to benefit the council and the staff, so that we have one place where people can go and find, all the information needed in the ordinance. We also anticipate there'll be some new permits associated with this task, and we also anticipate that there'll be, procedures for permits, and very likely city manager will help with certain procedures for those various permits. What the governance committee had already advised is that we can convert some of the policies that we have right into the ordinance itself. So we wouldn't need these extra policies and an ordinance. I believe Councilor Cook mentioned they had done that with the arts ordinance to kind of put everything in one spot. So one of the things I'll do is I'll just go over each section and then ask for some input. I have not addressed, we put together a statement of purpose, we put together a statement on authority, and this is very opportune that the city manager is here, because what the committee had discussed, there are certain things that they obviously want the council to be aware of and to approve, but there are other things that they simply don't. So, for instance, obstructing signs, that sort of thing. Interesting, the structure of several other city ordinances have 2 sort of paths. One has licensing agents, which is what we have. I think chapter 6 is 41 pages, and it's from the olden days, and where the licensing agent licenses not only encumbrances, but a bunch of businesses too. Two communities, I believe it's Dover and Rochester, have a licensing board. And that's permitted by statute, and that statute, which is referenced here, 286, talks about the city manager, the chief of police, and I believe a council member would be on this licensing board. So when we were looking at the structure of these other types of ordinances, I just want everyone to be aware that there's two ways to go. You know, some communities have created this licensing board that has the authority to approve things, and then there's a report back to council. And then other communities have the licensing officer, which is the structure that we have presently. So turning over to the second page, what I did, rather than give you 80 pages, is I just made a reference to where things live now and how many pages the existing ordinances are. So for instance, they're projecting sign permits, they've got a policy, and we also have sort of generic locations in our ordinance. So the only reason I am kind of needing guidance on that is my understanding was that we want everything incorporated into this one chapter. So I wanted you to get a sense of maybe the length and the content once we populate it with other aspects of, we cut and paste or we simply edit substantially. So I think, and I tried to categorize the different types of permits, and I'd love some feedback on that characterization and categorization. So the first section were signs and flags, and I thought that was logical to put those together. I understand that banners has been raised, and Councilor Cook, that's something in legal's to-do list, to work with the Arts and Culture Committee to explore banners. I don't think that's going to have a lot of content, you know, in the ordinance section itself. That would most likely just be a few paragraphs, and we wouldn't have to convert again the policies word for word. We could just do that, I think, simply in a couple of paragraphs, unless anyone thinks differently. So I'm just gonna plow along, you know, but the goal, I think, is to simplify the ordinance, and then as we have various permits, as you all know, working with in the city, that has a lot of Q&A and explanations as people navigate certain permits. So we are anticipating we don't have to repeat everything in the ordinance itself. And then the next one were from the policies as well, which were the sidewalk obstruction permits, and that's for A-frame signs, tables and chairs, planters and benches. Same type of thing. Converting a policy to an ordinance, I don't think it would be a lot of language to do that. The third one is new. This was not here last time, and I don't know how the committee feels about this, but the outdoor dining obviously is an existing ordinance. We have taxis. So what this is licenses and encumbrances for business use of city property. And again, trying to gather it all in one place. The taxis is, you know, quite a long ordinance section that exists. It's 7 pages long. I think we can probably streamline that.
One taxi.
Yeah, for the one taxi that we have. And, you know, as we often say, these ordinances have evolved over time. And so I think attempting to simplify that would make sense. Again, reproducing the hawkers and peddlers, both policy and there's an ordinance reference. We have a specific section regarding vendor carts in our ordinance, and then one for the one parking space that is available for folks to vend from. And then I added valet license because we have just a couple of those. What's not in here are dumpsters and buskers. And I know the committee talked about, again, putting everything in one spot. So that's just a thought to add dumpsters. And buskers are not, they're permitted, but again, I don't know whether we want to locate, even though there may not be a permit associated with something like that, at least the information on buskers, so you could look at it all in one place.
Do they require a permit now?
I don't believe so.
The other thing that I was gonna mention here that might be important is that we have a clause somewhere, and I can't tell you exactly where, in our ordinances, there's so many, about nonprofits, because they qualify as a business. But we have something about waiving
Certain
fees for a nonprofit. We should probably at least tag that here under
Mhm.
businesses.
Thanks, yes, I'll look at that. It's probably something that we want to put. Now, that segues perfectly into special events.
Well, I have another thing in
Oh,
that.
sure, absolutely.
You talk about taxis and buses, but I think as we go forward, more and more interest in public transportation in general. And I wonder if there needs to be something that is a little broader than taxis and what else? Buses.
That the existing ordinance talks about bus stops and
Yeah.
taxi cab spots. You're saying maybe that needs to be looked at more broadly?
Yeah, and I know there's been some people complain about parking on sidewalks for motorized scooters and things like that, and you see, so
Those are great comments. Maybe it is best to leave the taxi and buses out of this because that they live in chapter 7, our lovely chapter 7, and maybe it's best to keep those there as opposed to list them here in the encumbrance with that, and then look at them more broadly to include the types of transportation, the types of things that you're talking about.
right, I mean, we don't know what's ahead in transportation.
Right, it's true.
I just think that, but it is evolving.
Some cities have tried microtransit.
Mhm.
I haven't read about any microtransit companies being profitable, given the slim demand, but who knows?
Maybe we put a cross-reference here. Include it, taxis and taxis, buses, transit, and just put C
The other chapter.
chapter 7.
Yeah, I think
So
that
that
makes great
people
sense.
know that we understand there is an encumbrance there, but it really is not part of our encumbrance licensing. It's part of PTS.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
Play off of something Council Lombardi mentioned, which was the evolution of taxis, buses. What else might that include? And maybe if we use the word rideshare, maybe we use other or recognize other uses
Mhm.
that are taking place.
So to follow up on that, would the process then be to take that first to PTS, that kind of revamped transportation, and then bring it forward to council? Would you want it to go to PTS first?
I don't know, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, we're talking about that in the EDC too, this transportation, so.
It could go to both before it gets to council? Would that sound like the right process, or are you more interested in council seeing it in the first instance and then referring it?
I guess I'd like to I'm not sure we want to get into studying it at this moment. I just want to keep it very open. I mean, we have a lot to do here.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would agree. The committee has a lot to do without looking at taxis, all of those things, and we do have committees that are dedicated to that. We just might give them a heads up that it's going in an omnibus encumbrance permit and that we're just referencing it, that we're not actually making changes.
Okay.
Don't we have some capital in one of the out years for a transportation study?
Yes.
Is it 27?
Sounds right.
So
It's not a very out year.
Good point.
sort of a coming attractions and a cross-reference to chapter 7. Okay.
Because this committee is not
Mhm.
the experts to be considering this.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That is exactly the helpful editing that we will have to probably do with each idea as this evolves. Okay, so then special events permit, we are in the process of creating one, which on our Viewpoint OpenGov system. And what is happening now is staff members experience IT and another staff member are going out to each department that are involved in liquor review and special events, talking about what works under the present system. And then after that discussion with all of the departments, we'll come back and revise a special event permit. And then we'll have ongoing discussions with staff to make sure that we've covered what we needed, that staff is comfortable with how it looks, and then there'll be, if it's something that everyone is liking and that works well, then we'll deal with appropriate training and outreach if that is the path. I can say that in actually writing it out, if you look at the bottom of this page, the types of other permits that are required for special events, it's a bit eye-opening and sometimes hard to negotiate. The city manager's office does a great job with all the applicants. Most people are very well trained. However, sometimes people just, even though they're told, or even though they're asked, their tent permits get missed and, things like that. So we're just trying to work together as a unit to help people learn the system and help advise the public so that it's easier for them and easier to negotiate. And that will be interesting to see if we can link these other permits to this special permit so that an individual knows, oh yeah, gee, I have to make sure that I have a building permit for a tent, for big tents and that kind of thing.
I have something we might need to include here. We might need a disclosure statement about public forum spaces. Because people pull permits for public forum spaces, but it is a public forum space. So sometimes you end up with an unanticipated conflict because there's somebody there for using the public forum space during your event. And so I'm not saying that we should ban use of public forum spaces. What I'm saying is we need to give people awareness that when they are seeking to do an event in a public forum space, that there might be other people there.
And I know the city manager always mentions that when that occurs during our logistics meetings to all of the applicants. And we've actually written letters confirming, saying, you've asked, but just to know you don't have exclusive use or right. So, and sometimes people simply, we don't know what's going to appear in the public forum. But that's a good point to be reminded of and to continue to weave in when we're looking at this to make sure that that's known.
It might encourage people to think about maybe a different space for use because you don't know who's going to be there. So I'd hate for an organization to pay a fee to use the space and then show up and find that there's a major event or protest or something in that space, and then they feel like, oh, why did I pay the event and get my insurance and do this whole thing? I just don't want anyone to be disappointed is basically the concern I have, yeah.
and we will continue to note that as we have been, but maybe put that very boldly, in the documents. The other thing that this special event permit discussion is beneficial, the discussion's been beneficial for the creation of a landing page, just like we did recently for how to open a new business, which I think is great. It's like 4 simple, paragraphs, and then there's a link. The goal would be to do, something similar. Obviously, me, because I would not be good at that, but we have a great bunch of folks, Monty and company, that can do that, and worked well with other staff to create that business page. I think something similar for special events. We already have a lot of these things online, and not only are a lot of these things online, but they're also explained by, our folks taking the applications. But again, having it in a similar format, to the business, the opening business page, I think would be helpful to the public.
So would this be where road races and walkathons?
Yes, exactly, yep. And I don't know if we tried now to encourage the races to go out to Pease. That's been sort of a, we're sensitive to the impact, and so we oftentimes, and work with Pease, who are part of our logistics calls and also part of the permission seeking application to see if we can encourage as many road races to go out at Pease. And then the next 2 sections, E and F, are really the construction encumbrance permits that we have discussed with this committee. One of the things that we've also talked about for both of these long and short term is a reasonable ability for the city manager to extend. We for on day 31, we have to get a license before the city council, and so we want to build, I think, within this, what are those parameters? What's reasonable for extensions? We've also talked about the fact that, some construction given planning board approval and the CMMPs really do anticipate the need for certain licenses. So, we know that's a reality of construction and lots downtown. So, we'll try to address that somehow as well when we put the narrative in for these construction. The next guidance questions that I have for the committee is, in looking at Dover and Rochester and Concord, some of the ordinances list the other DPW permits, the flagging permits and the excavation permits. We've traditionally kept that for DPW to issue and to oversee. I did not list all of those here. There are various other types of permits, certain utility companies when they're doing work that have really just lived under the DPW, and they still would be overseen and approved by them. The question is, do we also want to list those and say, as a part of this one-stop shop kind of ordinance? Or are these just temporary uses of city property for construction, not some of the more complex permits for construction?
I mean, we're familiar on the fee committee with all of those digging and blasting and things like that, and those aren't, it seems to me that the language we're creating here is for encumbering the property as opposed to doing work.
Right, and that is the line that we've drawn, DPW. There's a actual, utility work.
Yeah, and all that runs through the permitting departments. Through Shanti's department, and I think that's the right place.
I think we have to be really careful of not over-regulating people.
Yep.
You know, I think about my neighbors. I live on one of those streets that's a one-lane street, and every time anybody gets a delivery of, you know, a new appliance or a piece of furniture, they have to block the street. You know, there's not another option. If, you know, but it's like 30 minutes, you know, if that, like somebody runs, it's a delivery. We don't want to get into the practice of asking residents every time they get a delivery that they have to come in and get a permit for, you know, for blocking the street for a few minutes for a delivery truck. Because Amazon frankly blocks it all the time for those similar things. So I think we should be mindful of that and not trying to over regulate.
A lot of large deliveries are between 12 and 6, you know, so it's an unknown time frame too.
Yeah.
Exactly. And these are people who are there that can move their vehicles. It's not like they're permanently stuck there. So if there was a fire, if they could move, they could move. It's not, you know. But I've seen trucks whenever there's a large delivery in my immediate neighborhood on Marcy Street, and it's a semi, they can't turn down the little streets. So they park, put on their flashers, and pull whatever out and carry it. So the truck's there for a little bit, but it's not that it can't be moved. You know, it's not that there isn't someone. So it's not truly an encumbrance. So I just want to be careful.
Certainly, yeah. And then moving on to the next section, I didn't know if this was the right place, but it was really kind of fun going through all of the websites and listing all the, you know, the places that folks can rent city property. Again, I don't know if this should live here or not. You know, we have, I think Council Cook, you had mentioned before, you know, using the library's facilities and folks using, you know, the pavilion at Fortree Island. And are we interested in making a reference to the different departments and listing this in the ordinance or leaving it out? I don't know. I just put it in for discussion. Thoughts?
It's nice to have them all here.
It's nice to have it. I mean, if this is the first place people are going to look for a permit, these are types of things that would be good to have there.
The only problem is if it's in an ordinance, you can't change it. So if you're temporarily taking something offline or you know, different than a policy or just a simple application, really. I think it's not a permit, it's just a little application. Most people take it for a day or, an event or something. So that could be an open question, I could think about that.
Maybe it's just a referral to these departments, who to
Yeah.
call, who, for use of the rental of city property.
Yeah.
City Hall for this,
That
like it is
simplify
now.
it. Mhm.
Recreation department, and then the recreation department say it's not available for that time.
Right.
I mean, that already
Up to,
happened.
up to them administratively
Yeah.
to date. So if you're looking for a city hall space, you'd use the clerk's office. And jumping ahead to number 4, if you're looking at book Bond Mall stage, you work with Sean Clancy and Economic Development. You can just make that.
Make those references to those departments, not list the facilities because we could change them
Those
and
could
then
change, right.
another way. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask about that.
I think it is helpful though that you do have each of them listed, to be honest, because some people don't know. So, for example, this year I wanted to use a space at this senior activity center, and I didn't realize that was through the rec department,
Mhm.
not directly through senior activity center. So it's helpful to go, oh, I go to the rec department if I need to rent a space at Fortree Island. Some people would be like, oh, I have no idea
Mhm.
what it is.
we could reference within this, the availability would be determined by the various departments, so that even if they're listed, it doesn't mean they're always gonna be there.
Right,
Okay.
not an exhaustive list.
Weddings in Prescott Park or yoga or things like that.
People apply, and there are certain locations, and it's through the rec department.
Rec department.
Yep, in Prescott Park. Again, I think they're told too, other stuff could be happening, you know, so you never quite know, but,
Not a private,
correct.
except maybe Fort Tree Island, right?
You can rent the
Yeah.
pavilion
The
before
pavilion,
Tree Island.
that's right, but
Or
other
that.
people can still be there, yeah.
Yeah, other people can use the other space around you. Yeah. It's more that there's a grill.
Yeah.
There are grills in the pavilion. Yeah.
It's
a big grill. Well, there are other grills around, too.
A little stand.
A little,
And then we had another generic, you know, section on fees, referring to chapter 1. The required and prohibited conduct of applicants. I know there were some points that were made that we might want to say, you know, including but not limited to. These statements are pretty generic, but I think the committee had specific concerns about if you fail to have it, apply for a permit at all. You know, maybe that's something for the fee committee to figure out, you know, what a fee might be for that. Illegal extensions, blocking streets as you talked about. So we might want to flesh out in this required and prohibited conduct, and also in sort of the denial and penalty section, flesh that out a little, give some examples. And I didn't know how the committee felt about that, or whether that should be really more policy. But there are some things that I think sometimes the public's not aware, you know.
I know one of those concerns was one of the ones I expressed around abuse of the 30-day construction encumbrance. You know, for example, getting a dumpster
And like,
and,
or moving.
and letting it sit for
Yes.
29 days, having
Yeah.
it picked up
Yeah,
for 3 and emptied, and then getting another 30-day permit and having it back there again. So that's a clear abuse of that policy when you really needed to request a long-term
so
permit.
So I think in the denial, suspension, revocation, and penalties, maybe an including but not limited to illegally extending, you know, blocking streets, blocking visibility, you know, making it clear there are certain behaviors that are not gonna be allowed for
Standard,
anything.
right.
Okay, so I can leave that in, I you know, included but not limited, obviously, we don't wanna limit ourselves to what we list, but there are certain things that the committee talked about that you've heard from the public that, people either are unaware, or
Right.
we wanna make sure we're upfront about advising people what's
Right.
permitted and what's not permitted.
Yeah, I think that I had a neighbor who had a complaint at one point that somebody had put the dumpster on a trailer for a construction project that lasted 9 months, and what they did is they just moved the trailer every 72 hours. So they essentially had a dumpster on site for 9 months, but they just moved the trailer a few feet, you know, like, so it's in a different parking spot. And so that's really not acceptable either. That's not, because it was taking up parking on a street that has very limited parking.
So could you, Jane or Susan, could you put in language that gives city administration the right to intervene should behavior seem to be falling afoul of the intended use or approval period?
Yeah, we that would be great to put that in. And one of the things we had discussed before is we don't know. Sometimes, you know, if it's out of where we ticket and our parking enforcement
Right.
folks aren't wandering around,
We wouldn't know.
we might not know on, you know, streets that aren't metered that this stuff's going on. So yeah, we could put a general and then also a specific for non-metered streets to make sure that there's some standards for that. And the other things that were added, based on the committee's request, were appeals to the city council. I wasn't really sure how to address that. I just honestly cut and pasted from another municipality. Those are the folks that have the licensing board, however. And there was an appeal to the council. There's a 30-day after the issuance of the permit, so there was some time limit associated with when one could raise an appeal. And then, and that gets a little tricky because, if you're on the street, if you get your permit issued, you're there, right? So, it's a question of what that might look like to the council, what would be required. I think that will require some more thought, but I put it out because it was something raised by the committee, particularly if things are not going to get approved by council, certain signs and certain extensions to encumbrances and licenses and that sort of thing. And then we talked about the city manager report back. So if things are going off the council agenda, there'd be some regular reporting for the number of encumbrances and licenses and all of that. So I wanted to note that before we moved on, that we had discussed that, and that was a suggestion by the committee.
Some other talk about maybe a consent agenda on the city council agenda, so
Yes.
I'm not sure where you would put that in. That might allow for notice for an appeal.
Yeah. If it all comes in as part of the consent agenda, as just so that if there is a problem, so if somebody emails you and emails a council member and says, I'm having a problem with my permit request, or a neighbor, somebody, you can at least pull it out because it's on the agenda. You can pull it out for discussion if you need to. I don't think this is likely to happen. I mean, I think it's important that people have they have that feeling that there is an appeal, that there's a way to approach the council and to have some action taken if they have a problem.
So the question would be, how many of these are you thinking you want to live strictly at the city manager's level, and how many of these you want to have some oversight over via a consent agenda?
It's a very good question.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
question.
I mean,
You had debated it previously, so I thought I'd bring it up in the context of the city manager's report. If it's
Yeah.
all gonna live with the city manager and you're just gonna hear about it on a monthly basis, there's not that sort of notice ahead of time.
well, right now we get special events, we get the construction encumbrances.
You get the licenses.
Signs.
Might I ask a question? If it is a consent agenda, would just facts about it be appropriate rather than the documents itself? For instance, the whole, you know what I mean, like a special event, rather than like a full flushed out.
Adding the whole
Doc-
packet to it.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah, one sentence.
please don't add to the packet.
So maybe a standardized form or something we could fill out for the agenda for those types of things, so that there's notice, there's dates, there's content, but it isn't like the license itself, which is 7 pages or whatever it is.
Possibly it's just a list, a list of approved signs, a list of, approved and any that are denied, maybe. So that way, those are the ones that are more likely to appeal, I think, is the denials, not the approvals.
Well, and someone could speak, if it's listed, someone who has a problem with it can bring it up, and then we could take it out of the consent.
I think that's the important piece. I don't think that we want to get more information necessarily than we're already receiving
Mhm.
as a council. We don't get information on A-frame signs right now, or
Right.
outdoor dining or taxis or hawkers, like, we don't get that information already. Yeah, we don't get any of that, but we do get special events, we do get projecting signs. I think it would be important to continue to get those and, construction, permits, just a listing of what is approved.
Yeah.
Also, people ask us about
Mhm.
things like construction,
Mhm.
so it's helpful to know.
I guess the thing is, we get, let's say, signs. I mean, we get the location, the image of it. But I don't see that, we also need all the detail
Mhm.
of what, the Public Works is doing about it. I mean, because they just do it. Just a thought.
And so when you're saying encumbrances, typically what you get are licenses, which are when encumbrances go beyond the 30 days. Would you also want a list of the encumbrances, the 30-day encumbrances that have been granted through DPW, or not? That would add to this list.
What's an example?
Anything under 30 days, so your window washers, you set up the scaffolding
Scaffolding,
and
yeah.
yep, and wash windows for a couple of weeks. We get about 100 a year of those types of short-term, under 30 days, a painter, a window washer, a quick construction job where someone's, in our property
Painting.
temporarily, but yes, so,
I don't know.
I think that we don't need them personally, but unless something gets extended, so it ends up being more than 30 days,
Mhm.
then we should know, even if it's the second time they pulled a 30-day permit.
okay, great.
Because by the time it would get to us,
Right.
they might have put the scaffolding up and taken it down and it's all over.
Exactly. Those are some of my comments and questions, so, anyone else have things
I have,
to discuss, add, subtract?
this is brand new now, social districts.
Yes, hasn't passed yet, hasn't been signed yet, I don't.
Well,
Oh, has
it looks like it's going to be.
I think
Has it
it's
signed?
signed.
Okay.
It has, yeah.
That is a separate conversation, but that will
Well,
potentially impact special events and locations and where you can have encumbrances and
so,
outdoor dining.
I mean, and I haven't looked at the state legislation on that, but, could someone request a temporary social district, for example, like on Market Square Day,
I don't believe the statute permits that. I think isn't it a ballot question?
Yes,
It needs to be
is.
on the ballot.
It needs to be a ballot question, so the voters would have to vote it in the first instance. And then I think the definition of it does not contemplate a temporary pop-up,
Yeah.
It's a true location, it's a true geographic area that would need to be determined to be the social district. But you are right, it absolutely could impact all of what we've just discussed, every type of encumbrance. So that
Oh,
would
that's a
be,
disaster.
We've had temporary pop-up kind of social areas before, but that's for events. So that's been under Billy, and then that is part of this encumbrance for events.
right, that our liquor committee reviews special events that serve alcohol, and the New Hampshire Liquor Commission certainly has a separate and distinct permit that permits alcohol, and they go in, they inspect, and they make sure. That may be a very different process if communities adopt these social districts and what would be permitted within them. So we will see what the voters decide, and then we'll also see what, I'm assuming there'll be something from the Liquor Commission for guidance on these types of districts, because my understanding is from what they require now, they could not require it in some of the things they require now. So it will be interesting to see how this evolves as time goes on.
What is the liquor review committee? Who is on the committee?
It's basically a subset of the logistics for special events, and it's, got police and fire and inspection and planning and
And
city
health,
manager and.
Staff committee.
And,
legal,
yeah.
it's a staff
Staff.
committee, right?
And what we're hoping to do is with the special event permitting, oftentimes it's a little a lot of times for those events you've discussed for special events, it's a subset of a special event, so we can put that on a permit. The other time liquor review gets involved is if it's a brick and mortar is gonna be a bar, and we get letters from the New Hampshire State Liquor Commission to say, we
Please
need your
affirm.
sign on, and the city managers to sign off on certain things for different things. So that's a little aside or a add-on to special events.
We're essentially affirming that the business is in keeping with what the State Liquor Commission requires them to do.
And the other thing for the brick and mortars is we have an agreement that we have them sign, which also is a contract. So even if the Liquor Commission does not take action under the statutory scheme, we have them sign a contract that says you'll do X or Y. So we have another avenue if they make a mistake or don't do what they're supposed to do.
You mentioned dumpster permits. How are we doing on that project?
We need to get busy on that project. I know I need to get busy on that project.
We have a finite number of them. Is it 4? Is it 6?
I
What is it?
think there's 4 and 2 have been, I think 2 are all set. I know one was moved off
Ferry Landing.
city property,
Yeah.
which was great. That was a nice solution. I think we have Worthlot and Ferry Landing's fine. We have their agreement and that has been memorialized. I think we have one in Worthlot,
Correct.
and I'm not sure if there's the 4th.
But
Is
we'll likely have one coming up with on Congress Street.
Yes.
There's been a discussion about
Yeah.
can we regionalize
Yeah.
the collection of trash in that area?
Yes.
It's something we are looking into,
Which makes
both with the
some
developer and then aside from the developer.
Yes, it would be wonderful not to have all the little dumpsters out on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, and get it off of space between the garage and.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in design right now is the concept of regionalizing the trash collection along with bike racks within the cage area of Hanover Garage as you come in from the High Street, Ladd Street entrance.
Be wonderful.
That's great.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Thanks to Jane
A lot
for
of
working
work.
the threads together.
Now we just gotta start chipping away and rewriting those sections. That will be coming back hopefully to you all now that we have a better outline, I think. So good.
Thank you so much for putting all of this together. And I'm not gonna ask everyone today to go through and start working the language. But we will, at our next meeting, go through the statement of purpose, go through the authority, make sure that everyone's happy with language. And then for just this section, and then we will go to we'll go to the first ordinance that we're pulling in. So we can do those 2 tasks at our next meeting. And I think the first ordinance, from what I can tell, is projecting signs.
Is what?
Projecting signs.
Oh, yeah.
So
Do you wanna do those projecting signs and the
Flags.
sidewalk obstructions together, cause those were the policies, we could just do those too?
okay, we'll do the policies that we're bringing in. Is it possible to get someone here, I'm thinking, planning handles projecting signs, if I'm correct on that?
They do go through
Yes.
planning,
Yep.
we're trying to get them out of legal, but they find their way up there as well. I'm not sure who else, with inspections, zoning, does Jason look at them? I think.
he enforces that they're
Yeah,
done correctly.
but
I don't know if he looks at them.
There are
before.
there's a sign off for a number of individuals in that projecting sign. But planning is the major one.
I will defer to the city manager's guidance on who should be here for that
Sure.
discussion, but I just wanna make sure that if we start editing any of these policies, that we're
Right.
not doing anything we shouldn't,
And the
we're not
clerk,
doing any damage.
yeah, the clerk's office does the sidewalk obstructions for the A-frame, so do we wanna add the clerk,
No,
they administer those?
And it's always helpful to hear from the people who have to, who deal with the, like, you know, have to administer these and deal with the public. And if there are any comments that maybe we don't hear.
Yep.
That things we need to update that we wouldn't know about. Is there anything else? All right, we don't have other business, on the agenda. So I'm gonna open it up for public comment. Is there anyone here to speak?
They didn't wait for right, they just waved the spot.
Teacher Huda, Portsmouth. So, in sitting here and listening to this, some questions came up into my mind. And I don't know if this is only the first part of your process, but the big question came up is how does this interface with the rest of the departments who do currently provide this? So you just started talking about, and it sounded like there was 2 places where you go to get 1 permit. So you might consider that and getting people on board here. The other thing that I want to ask is, how is this a deviation from the current process? If I put my Jane Doe hat on outside looking to where I go, if I look at back in the back where it seems like you're adding a layer here instead of putting in efficiencies. And I would ask you to look at the lean process in manufacturing. How many times does a person have to handle this in the city? And how can we, is that the true goal of this? That would be my question. And the other thing would be, some of this stuff has to go through planning board and through different boards that are assigned to do this by an RSA. So how does this change that and diverge from the process that we currently have? That was just another thing. And I think Councilor Tabor brought up a good point on encumbrance versus doing work. It was a little confusing to me on the new sections here for adding it seems like another layer here for rental property. Me, as somebody who wanted to have a birthday party for somebody somewhere, either community campus, Spinnaker, the pool, anywhere, where do I go? And, right now, it would be logical to go to that department to request it. If you move this or add another layer, are we really streamlining or are you, changing it? The other thing that was maybe a little concerning here is just having a report at the end of this when it's basically done from the city manager. So how many are we going to have here? And the new section that you decided to add on the appeals, if I was a person that wanted to have a birthday party and I had to go to all of this other stuff and then go back to appeal, I would say, parties, the date's over. So I would urge you to put this up closer as a person looking to get a permit or anything. And basically, that's just what I have as far as something for you to think about since you're in the beginning of the process here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
I just wanted to listen, I think. I had a problem this morning with somebody building on city property. And there's nobody to report it to. Peter Rice is gone, somebody else. And I said, well, geez, maybe I should think about building a tiny house on the same place.
Jackie, you need to go.
Then they can see me here.
I think it's a matter of grabbing your voice, because the speaker is centralized in the middle of the room.
I had a problem this morning.
Let me
Somebody-
back up for minute taking purposes. This is Jackie Kelly Pitts.
Somebody building something on city property down by Kearsarge. I guess my feeling is that if you're gonna build something on city property, either you should have a permit or buy it. You pay taxes on it. The truck was sitting out in the middle of the road, so I had to go on the other side of the road to get out, which is no big deal. But I believe the rules are for everybody. And when I tried to, well, they're there, you know, there's always that old saying that said it's better to say, I'm sorry than may I. On vacation, I understand that, nobody gets excited about this stuff. I guess I shouldn't either. But I do, because I believe that the rules apply to everyone. And what it does for me individually, because I'm up and down that road all the time, I'm in and out, I don't like to stay home. It makes more traffic, it makes animals that are coming to run across the field, children that are coming across to run across the field, and of course you can go as slow as you want. But sometimes it's very hard to see somebody coming out of that treed area. So that's my concern, and that's an encumbrance as far as I'm concerned. If you're encumbering, I know there's a Eversource right away there. And under 30 days, oh yeah. That's very interesting. The other day, I timed it because I wanted to. I was parked behind a FedEx guy for 8 minutes because I couldn't get around traffic. So these are things that we have to consider, I think. And even as you narrow the streets and narrow Market Square, and there's going to be more deliveries because there's nothing behind, I think you have to consider that there are other people like me who drive and need to understand that maybe there's hours you can do these things. As far as the social district, that's another story for another day. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one person, hand up.
Are you ready for me? I guess so.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tom Neese, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I'm going to take a step back at something the governance committee did earlier. You spent a lot of time working on the city's ethics policy, including a training manual for city volunteers, such as members of boards, etc. It's my understanding that implementation of these new policies is being addressed primarily, if not solely, to new appointees to boards and not existing members of the boards and existing volunteers. If that was the committee's intent, I encourage you to reconsider. You have to remember that some of the boards have terms of up to 3 years. So 2 to 3 years, people aren't going to be familiarized with the ethics policy or the training manual. This doesn't seem wise to me. I think that we could all benefit. I am a member of a board. I certainly believe that I could benefit from that. I think at a minimum, existing board members should be encouraged to review this information and to complete the manual. I actually believe that they all should be required to go through it and sign off that they've looked at it. But I think at a minimum, you should try and encourage them to. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for everyone who came to speak. Normally we don't answer public comment. I think though it's important since we're in the very preliminary stages of what we're doing to make sure that everybody understands that the goal of this process is to put everything in the same place, not necessarily to change processes, but to make sure it's easier to find. Because right now it's hard for people to find this information because it's in so many different places. And so the goal is really to create one ordinance that has everything in it. And it's essentially pulling existing ordinances into place and then modifying those when necessary, trying to make them simpler. So we haven't gotten to that stage yet. Right now, we're just looking at a framework for pulling everything together. And our next meeting is when we'll start looking at the ordinances, in particular the policies, I think is what we're looking at the first meeting, to start trying to simplify where we can simplify. But it really doesn't change the processes and who these permits go through and how that, and it doesn't add more for city staff to do. It puts all the information in the same place is the goal. And then we'll try to simplify. I think that helps, if that helps clarify where we are, I think that's important. And I want to make sure that we get information from former Representative Callie Pitts on location for if there is an encumbrance occurring.
Right, if I can, any call of that nature, feel free to call the manager's office right away, and we can coordinate.
No, I didn't,
Because it could very well be that someone's gotten a permit to do that work there, so just start with the manager's office.
So we'll make sure we get that information. And thank you to Mr. Neese for calling in. The committee did do a lot of work on the volunteer manual, and I think that I personally, I don't know how the committee feels on this, think that everybody should have this training. I know that we had been rolling out a new process for training for staff, and that has taken a long time as far as rolling out all these electronic training modules. And so that probably has a little bit to do with the delay at the moment. But
Yeah, so I think that the committee had just made a policy decision, given the practical aspects of this, to make it proactive. There's certainly nothing that prohibits any current board member from reviewing those materials. They're available on the website. So, and I certainly don't disagree, it should be encouraged of all board members, but monitoring the requirement and affecting that through the digital, online system was a concern that caused us to make it only proactive. But if the committee or the city council wants to change that, we can address that.
Yeah, I agree with the chair that if we could disseminate it to everybody, that would be great. But I understand the system is the whole new platform that we need to learn how to use it. That's gonna take time.
maybe we can try a different dissemination process initially, just by sending the volunteer handbook to all the committee chairs, even via email, and saying, can you share this with your committee? We could ask the clerk's office maybe to do that.
We're in the midst of a process with the clerk's office in identifying all the committee members and chair people, et cetera, and getting that all online into our HiQ case management system. And once that's done, that will be a much easier process to send a link to our Power DMS system, which is where the handbook lives currently through HR. And we can certainly do that and encourage everyone to look at it.
Do you know how long that process is gonna take? Will it be, I know that we have an election coming up, so the clerk's office is about to get really busy.
Yes, she is. So I'm not sure I can answer that question. We've had several meetings now with the clerk's office, so how far off we are from being able to effectuate this particular event, I'm not sure, but I can certainly report back to you.
I think administratively, it would make sense for the staff liaisons to each board or commission or committee to share what exists now, to explain that when it was enacted, it was on a going forward basis, and that as people renew or are appointed, they will be subject to this, but to be aware of it now. We can push that email out now.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Any announcements?
It's our next meeting.
Our next meeting is in August. Here, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Our next meeting should be that, unfortunately, I think it would have been scheduled to conflict with the city council meeting, Do we wanna do off weeks? I don't think we actually put them on the schedule for August. Do we wanna do off weeks, like the 11th and the 25th?
Do we need two? We have the 11th and the 25th already on the
Yes,
calendar.
I think that we probably need one, at least, the 11th. I think we have to give time for modifications. I
Okay.
think that's the challenge with doing two, is that it doesn't give legal the time to go back and make revisions, which I think is necessary. But
So that's in 2 weeks.
the 11th would be, that's almost a month,
It's 4 weeks, right?
yeah, 4 weeks out.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
So
I was looking at,
does the 11th work for everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
we currently have the 28th on here now too.
Right, and it's a placeholder, so that will set us up for September, to go into September, and maybe we'll have 2 meetings in September because we'll be able to we'll have more material back by then.
So we're
address.
canceling the 28th.
I think that it's the 25th,
Fifth, yeah.
25th, I think will be more
Monday.
challenging because there'll be
I'm
4
talking
policies.
I'm talking about this month.
Oh, you're talking about July?
Mm.
Yes,
There's no meeting.
there's no meeting on the 28th, as far as I'm concerned, in July.
And then the 11th, we'll
The
have
11th.
one meeting in August.
One meeting in August. And then we'll get back to our 2 meeting cadence in September. I have no doubts, there's no way we would finish this work this year, but we can at least get started.
So just so you, I will be on vacation on the 11th, but I know Jane can handle the work here. She's doing the lion's share of this work, so.
Very good. All right. If there's nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.